Something is unfolding inside Tehran right now that could reshape the entire Middle East. Iran's president has reached his breaking point with the most powerful military force in his own country. He looked top IRGC generals in the eye and delivered a direct order. Stop immediately. No more unilateral strikes. No more escalation. The word sent shockwaves through the regime's inner circle, and even the United States, watching from afar, was caught off guard by how deep this rift has become. What happens when the elected leader of Iran tries to pull back from the brink while the Revolutionary Guards push harder? This is not just another political disagreement. This is a power struggle that could determine whether the current fragile ceasefire holds or if the region explodes once more. The tension had been building for weeks. President Masoud Pezeshkian sat across from senior IRGC commanders in a closed meeting. His voice was firm, edged with frustration that had been simmering since the early days of the conflict. Reports from inside Tehran described the moment as electric. Pezeshkian accused the generals of acting without coordination, of launching attacks on regional targets that destroyed any hope of de-escalation. He called their approach reckless. He demanded they halt operations that risked dragging Iran into an even deeper catastrophe. But what happened next changed everything. The IRGC, long the untouchable backbone of the Islamic Republic, did not simply nod in agreement. This confrontation exposed cracks in the regime that outsiders had long suspected but never seen so clearly. And in Washington, analysts monitoring every signal from Tehran were surprised by the intensity. They had expected unified defiance from Iran. Instead, they saw division at the very top. To understand how we reached this moment, we need to step back into the chaos of early 2026. The war began with devastating speed. Strikes rained down. Key figures were lost. The Supreme Leader's death created a vacuum that the IRGC quickly moved to fill. Ahmad Vahidi, the hardline commander at the helm of the Guards, emerged as one of the most influential voices directing military responses and even influencing negotiation positions. Pezeshkian, the reformist-leaning president, found himself increasingly sidelined. His government pushed for diplomatic off-ramps and economic stability. The IRGC, focused on resistance and retaliation, saw restraint as weakness. The divide was not new, but the pressures of war made it explosive. In the days leading up to the confrontation, tensions boiled over specific incidents. IRGC forces conducted strikes and naval actions in the Persian Gulf that reversed diplomatic signals sent by the Foreign Ministry. Ships were targeted. Traffic through critical waterways was disrupted. These moves came without full government coordination, according to sources close to the president. Pezeshkian reportedly viewed them as madness, actions that invited more destruction onto Iran at a time when the country could barely afford it. He warned that continuing down this path would lead to irreversible consequences. The economy was already strained. Public morale was cracking under the weight of conflict. Yet the Guards pressed forward, believing that maximum pressure was the only language their enemies understood. This was not the first clash. Earlier meetings had shown Pezeshkian urging the IRGC to think about post-war Iran. What would reconstruction look like? How would the nation recover if escalation continued without a clear endgame? The responses from the military side were dismissive. Focus on the fight now, they insisted. Victory or survival through strength was the priority. But Pezeshkian had enough. The direct order to stop came during a high-stakes session where the president laid bare his accusations. Unilateral actions by the Guards had wrecked ceasefire prospects. They were steering the country toward disaster. The room fell silent as he spoke. Generals who were used to operating with near impunity now faced pushback from the civilian leadership. What most people don't realize is how rare this kind of open confrontation is inside the Islamic Republic. The IRGC answers primarily to the Supreme Leader's office. The president holds formal executive power, but has always navigated a system where real military and security decisions often bypass the elected government. For Pezeshkian to challenge them so directly signaled a breaking point. As word of the meeting leaked through regime circles, it created ripples of uncertainty. Hardliners within the Guards saw the president's intervention as interference. Reformist voices and those tired of endless conflict saw a glimmer of hope that someone was finally trying to rein in the escalators. Meanwhile, in the United States, intelligence assessments were being updated in real time. American officials had been preparing for a monolithic Iranian response. The surprise came from discovering just how fractured the decision-making had become. Some in Washington viewed this as an opportunity. Internal division could weaken Iran's ability to sustain prolonged confrontation. Others worried that a desperate IRGC might lash out more unpredictably to reassert dominance. The stakes could not be higher. The Persian Gulf remained a flashpoint. Disruptions there sent oil prices soaring and threatened global shipping. Any miscalculation by either side inside Iran could reignite direct exchanges with Israel or the US. Pezeshkian's call to stop was not just about internal control. It was about survival. Let's dive deeper into the personalities driving this drama. Masoud Pezeshkian rose as a relative moderate in a system dominated by hardliners. His background as a heart surgeon shaped a pragmatic approach focused on the Iranian people's welfare. He entered office promising reforms and better governance. The war tested those promises severely. On the other side stands Ahmad Vahidi and his inner circle of IRGC commanders. Vahidi's long history in the Guards, including past roles in the Quds Force, made him a veteran of asymmetric warfare and regional operations. He and his allies viewed the conflict as existential. Backing down was not an option. They believed their revolutionary mandate gave them authority to act decisively, even if it clashed with the president's office. This power struggle reflects deeper fault lines in the Islamic Republic. The Constitution creates parallel structures. Elected institutions coexist with unelected centers of power like the Supreme Leader's Office and the IRGC. When those centers align, the system projects strength. When they diverge, especially under wartime pressure, cracks appear. Reports suggest Pezeshkian felt increasingly isolated. Appointments were blocked. Access to key decision forums was limited. In one dramatic development, rumors even circulated about a possible resignation letter, though officials quickly denied it. Whether fully accurate or not, the stories highlighted the depth of the deadlock. But what happened next truly intensified the suspense. As Pezeshkian issued his directive, the IRGC did not publicly defy him. Instead, subtle shifts occurred. Some operations slowed. Messaging from military channels became more coordinated with government statements. Yet behind the scenes, the power play continued. Loyalists to the Guards reinforced their influence over security apparatuses and economic assets under their control. The United States watched this unfold with calculated interest. American strategy had relied on maximum pressure to force concessions. Now, signs of internal Iranian discord offered new variables. Could Pezeshkian gain enough traction to steer toward diplomacy? Or would the IRGC's hardline approach prevail, prolonging the conflict? This uncertainty kept analysts in Washington glued to every scrap of intelligence. Surprising assessments emerged. The U.S. did not fully grasp the personalities now sitting across the table in any potential talks. The dynamic between the president and the Guards created unpredictability that complicated American planning. Zoom out to the regional picture. Iran's proxies and allies had been activated during the war. Hezbollah, Houthis, and others engaged in coordinated actions. These operations were largely directed through IRGC channels. Pezeshkian's push to stop immediate escalations raised questions about how unified Iran's axis of resistance truly was. If the president could curb the Guards' adventurism, it might open space for de-escalation across multiple fronts. But if the IRGC retained operational control, strikes could resume at any moment, drawing in more players and risking wider war. The economic dimension added another layer of drama. Iran's economy groaned under sanctions, war damage, and disrupted trade. Pezeshkian reportedly emphasized that continued fighting without a plan for recovery was unsustainable. The Guards countered that yielding would invite greater long-term weakness. This debate was not abstract. Ordinary Iranians felt the consequences daily. Shortages, inflation, and uncertainty about the future fueled quiet discontent. The regime's legitimacy rested on projecting strength and providing stability. The internal clash threatened both. As weeks passed after the confrontation, a tense equilibrium settled. Pezeshkian continued to assert civilian authority where he could. The IRGC maintained its grip on military and strategic decisions. Neither side delivered a knockout blow. The result was a hybrid leadership that left outsiders guessing who truly held the reins. This situation delighted some in the West who saw division as a strategic advantage. It alarmed others who feared miscalculation during a fragile ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz remained a critical choke point. Any renewed attempt by the Guards to control traffic there could spike global energy prices and provoke direct response. Pezeshkian's stand represented more than one man's frustration. It embodied the eternal tension between revolutionary ideology and pragmatic governance. The IRGC embodied the revolution's uncompromising spirit. Reconciling the two under wartime stress proved incredibly difficult. Curiosity builds when we consider what comes next. Will Pezeshkian find allies within the system to bolster his position? Could the Supreme Leader's office intervene decisively to settle the dispute? Or might the IRGC's influence grow so dominant that the presidency becomes largely ceremonial? The answers will shape Iran's trajectory for years. A weakened presidency could accelerate hardline control, leading to more aggressive postures. A successful pushback by Pezeshkian might create breathing room for diplomacy and economic relief. Even the United States remains surprised by the pace of these developments. Initial assumptions about a unified Iranian command have given way to a more nuanced and therefore more dangerous picture. Fragmented decision-making increases the risk of accidental escalation even as it offers openings for negotiation. Picture the scene inside those Tehran meeting rooms, the air thick with unspoken accusations. generals in uniform staring down a president who dared challenge their methods, the fate of millions hanging on the outcome of these power plays. This is the reality of modern geopolitics in the Middle East. Not grand armies clashing on open fields, but whispers in corridors, leaked memos, and tense confrontations that can shift the balance of power overnight. The confrontation between Pezeshkian and the IRGC generals did not end with one meeting. It continues to echo through Iranian institutions. Every new statement, every military movement, every diplomatic signal is now viewed through the lens of this internal struggle. What if the president succeeds in reining them in? The region might step back from the edge. What if the guards prevail? The cycle of retaliation could restart with even greater intensity. Global powers are paying close attention. Russia and China, with their interests in stability and energy markets, monitor for signs of Iranian collapse or resurgence. European nations weigh the humanitarian and economic fallout. Israel maintains vigilance against any renewed threats. For the Iranian people, this drama is lived daily. They watch their leaders clash while hoping for relief from conflict and hardship. The outcome will affect everything from fuel prices to personal freedoms. The story is far from over. New chapters are being written in real time. Each development carries the potential to surprise the world once again. Pezeshkian's order to stop immediately was a bold gamble. It exposed vulnerabilities in the regime, but also demonstrated that not everyone in Tehran is locked into endless confrontation. Whether that gamble pays off remains the central question hanging over the Persian Gulf. As external pressures mount and internal tensions simmer, one thing is clear. The relationship between Iran's civilian leadership and its military guardians will define the country's path forward. The world watches, waiting to see which side ultimately prevails. The surprise felt in Washington reflects a broader truth. Iran remains a complex actor whose internal dynamics often defy simple analysis. What appears as monolithic defiance from outside can mask deep divisions within. This rift gives analysts pause. It forces a reevaluation of strategies built on assumptions of unity. It creates opportunities for creative diplomacy even as it heightens risks of unpredictable actions. In the end, the confrontation between the president and the top IRGC generals is about control. Control over Iran's future. Control over its response to external threats. Control over the narrative of resistance versus pragmatism. The order was given. Stop immediately. Now the question is whether anyone will listen and what the consequences will be if they do not. The Middle East holds its breath. The balance remains delicate. One wrong move from any faction inside Iran could tip the scales toward renewed chaos. Yet the very existence of this pushback offers a faint signal that alternatives might still be possible. This is the unfolding drama that could change everything. The internal battle for Iran's soul is playing out against a backdrop of regional war and global stakes. No one can predict the final act with certainty. But every development keeps the world riveted, wondering what will happen next in Tehran. And as the dust continues to settle from recent conflicts, this power struggle may prove to be the most consequential story of all. The president had enough. The generals heard the command. The region waits to see the results.